Hello and good afternoon everyone. I am Ms.Tehseen Mistry, the English teacher from Anjuman-I-Islam's A.A.K English Secondary School. I welcome you all to our school's YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss a very short, simple and sweet poem from our 7th standard English syllabus. The poem is from unit number 3. The name of the poem is Tartary. Now this poem has been written by Walter de la Mare. Now let us see what the poem is all about. So first we will have a very quick short recitation of the poem at the beginning. If I were Lord of Tartary, myself and me alone, my bed should be of ivory, of beaten gold my throne, and in my court should peacocks flaunt, and in my forests tigers haunt, and in my pools great fishes slant their fins athwart the sun. If I were Lord of Tartary, trumpeters every day to every meal would summon me, and in my courtyard bray. And in the evening lamps would shine, yellow as honey, red as wine, while harp and flute and mandolin made music sweet and gay. If I were Lord of Tartary, I'd wear a robe of beads. White and gold and green they'd be, and clustered thick as seeds. And ere should wane the morning star, I'd don my robe and scimitar, and zebras 7 should draw my car through Tartary's dark glades. Lord of the fruits of Tartary, her rivers silver pale, Lord of the hills of Tartary, glen, thicket, wood and dale. Her flashing stars, her scented breeze, her trembling lake like foamless seas, her bird delighting citron trees in every purple vale. So this was the poem comprising of 4 stanzas. Now we will look at the explanation of each of these stanzas in detail. So let us begin. Here again we start with recitation of each single stanza along with the explanation. If I were Lord of Tartary, myself and me alone, my bed should be of ivory, of beaten gold my throne, and in my court should peacocks flaunt, and in my forests tigers haunt, and in my pools great fishes slant their fins athwart the sun. So first, let us mark the meaning of all the new words that we encounter in this first stanza. So I request all of you to keep a pencil in your hand and keep marking the meaning of the new words that we encounter. The very first word is the word ivory. Ivory is basically a hard, white substance which is obtained from the tusk of elephants. That's ivory. The next new word we have is throne. Throne basically refers to a royal chair, a chair used mostly by kings and queens and princes. The next word we have here again is flaunt. Flaunt means to show off. To show off. Again we have another new word here which is haunt, which means to scare away. To scare away. And finally we have the word athwart, which means facing towards. Facing towards. Now let us see the explanation of this first stanza. Tartary was the name of a place in Asia during the British period. So there was basically a place by the name Tartary which was located in the continent of Asia during the British time. And here the poet Walter de la Mare, he wishes to be the only king of this place. So it is believed that this was one of the most richest places in Asia, and maybe it is because of this reason that the poet Walter de la Mare, he wishes or he desires or he dreams to be the only king of such a rich famous place. Since he wishes to be a rich king, he wants everything exotic. Now because he wants to be a king, he wants to be a rich king of a rich place, of a rich land. He wants everything in that land to be really exotic, everything to be very, very unique. So the poet starts by saying that he wishes to have a bed made of pure ivory and a chair made of pure gold. So here he starts his list of desires by stating that if he were the king of this place called Tartary, so definitely in his wish list he would firstly have a bed which would be made of ivory. Now ivory is believed to be a very expensive substance. So here he says that he wants to have a bed on which he could sleep, and this bed would be made of pure ivory, and also he would love to have a royal chair, a throne, which would be made of pure gold, again another expensive material. We know that when peacocks open their feathers, they look very, very elegant. So we know that peacock is a bird which has this additional feature, natural feature. Whenever the peacocks open their feathers, they look very elegant, they look very beautiful. They look a class apart. So here the poet wants to have his entire land filled with peacocks who show off their elegance by opening their beautiful feathers. So here the poet wishes to have his entire kingdom, his entire land that he is going to rule, to be filled with peacocks, and these peacocks, whenever they open their feathers, they would look very elegant, they would look beautiful, and thereby they would give out an indication that they belong to such a rich land. He goes on to add that in his forests would be fierce tigers who would scare away enemies. So here the poet, he goes on to add that in his forest, in the forests that fall under his kingdom, he would love to have tigers, mighty fierce tigers who would scare away all his enemies. The poet also says that in his pools he would have huge fishes who would move in a slanting position, and they would have their fins facing towards the sun. So finally, in the first stanza, he goes on to add that he would love to have in his kingdom courtyard, he would love to have huge pools. In the pools, he would have specifically huge fishes. These fishes would always move in a slanting position, in a diagonal position, and most of the times these fishes would have their fins facing towards the sun. So these are the primary list of things that he wants for himself if and only if he gets a chance to become the king of Tartary. So firstly, he wants, the first desire that he has for himself is to be the king of Tartary, which is believed to be a very rich, famous land, which was a very rich, famous land. Secondly, if he would be the king of Tartary, definitely he would have everything exotic for himself, nothing ordinary. So he would love to have a bed on which he could sleep, and the bed would be made of an expensive material, that is ivory. He would love to have a throne, a royal chair on which he would sit, and this chair again would be made of pure gold, another expensive substance. Then he goes on to add that because peacocks are considered to be very elegant, beautiful and very rich birds, so he would love to have these birds in his courtyard, kingdom courtyard. And whenever these peacocks would open their feathers, they would look elegant, they would look beautiful. He would love to have tigers, mighty, strong, fierce tigers in his forest, which fall under his kingdom. So these tigers would basically scare away all his enemies. Then he would have big, huge pools in his courtyard, and in these pools he would have really big fishes, which would always move in slanting positions with their fins facing towards the sun. Right? Now let us move to the second stanza. If I were Lord of Tartary, trumpeters every day to every meal would summon me, and in my courtyard bray. And in the evening lamps would shine, yellow as honey, red as wine, while harp and flute and mandolin made music sweet and gay. So again, we first start with the meanings of all the new words. Not too many new words here. The first word is trumpeters. It means musicians who play trumpets. Now we'll come to what trumpets are basically. So next new word is summon. Summon means to call somebody. The next new word is bray, B-R-A-Y, bray. Bray is basically the sound made by a donkey, but here bray refers to a very loud sound. A loud sound. And finally we have the word gay. Gay means happy. Happy. Now in the second stanza, the poet says that if he were the king of Tartary, he would have a group of musicians, specifically trumpeters, who would be assigned the duty to call him for each and every meal. So the poet says that if he were the king of Tartary, he would have a group of musicians, specifically trumpeters, and these trumpeters would be given the duty of calling him for each and every meal. So what does that mean? These trumpeters before every meal would assemble in the large open ground in front of the poet's kingdom and play loud music, thereby inviting him for every meal. So these trumpeters, now this is what a trumpet looks like. So these trumpeters, before every meal, before breakfast, lunch, evening meal and the dinner, these trumpeters would together assemble, they would gather in the open ground in front of this poet's kingdom, and they would play loud music. And when they would start playing music, this would be a signal for the king, who is the poet basically, that it is time for his meal. Then the poet says that in the evening his entire castle would be lit up because of the lamps. So in the evening, like we know, in olden days there were no tube lights and these bulbs. So people had lamps and lanterns in their houses and kingdoms, and they used to light these up, and that is how things used to work. So here the poet says that when it would be evening, his entire castle, his entire palace would be lit up because of the lamps that would be lighted, and these lamps would give a yellow glow, a yellow colored light which would resemble the color of honey, and in between they would also give out a red colored light which would resemble the color of wine. He adds that in the evening the musicians would play different musical instruments which would give out sweet music and make him happy. So here the poet says that in the evening when the lamps are all lighted up and everything is looking very beautiful, yellowish, reddish in color, the other musicians of his kingdom, apart from the trumpeters, they would play different musical instruments like the harp. So this is the harp, then the flute, and also the mandolin, and they would play all these different musical instruments, and these musical instruments would give out a very sweet music which would make him and all the people of his kingdom very, very happy. Right now, this is the third stanza. If I were Lord of Tartary, I'd wear a robe of beads, white and gold and green they'd be, and clustered thick as seeds. And ere should wane the morning star, I'd don my robe and scimitar, and zebras 7 should draw my car through Tartary's dark glades. So the new words here, first is the word robe, R-O-B-E. Robe is basically a jacket. A long ankle length jacket is a robe. The next new word is clustered. Clustered means to hold together, collect or combine together. Then we have the word er. Er means before. Before. Next word is the word wane, which means disappear. Disappear. The next word we have is morning star. Morning star is basically a bright planet, usually Venus, which is seen in the eastern sky before or at sunrise. Next word that we have here is dawn. Dawn means to wear. To wear. And scimitar means sword. Sword. The word draw means to pull. To pull. And finally, there is the word glades, which means valley. Valley. Okay, now, continuing his desire to be the king of Tartary, the poet says that he would love to wear a long jacket made of colorful beads. So, his desire to be the king of Tartary is still on. He still desires to be the king of this rich place. And here he says in the third stanza that being the king, he would love to wear a long jacket, a long robe, which would be made of colorful beads. So this is what, so basically he says that if he would be the king of Tartary, then definitely he would love to wear a long jacket, a long robe, and this robe would not be made of any cloth, but it would be made of colorful beads. These beads would be mostly of white, golden and green color, and they would be all held together tightly. So these beads would predominantly be of white color, golden color and green color, and they would all be very intricately, closely held together. He also says that before the morning star disappears, he would wear his robe and take his sword and would sit in his royal carriage, which would be pulled by 7 zebras through the dark valleys of Tartary. So he says that before the morning star, before this bright planet, it disappears right before sunrise, he would wear this heavy, precious, colorful robe. He would take his sword, his scimitar. He would sit in his royal carriage, which would be pulled by 7 zebras, and he would travel all through the dark valleys of this place called Tartary. Right? So this was the third stanza. Now coming finally to the last stanza. Lord of the fruits of Tartary, her rivers silver pale. Lord of the hills of Tartary, glen, thicket, wood and dale. Her flashing stars, her scented breeze, her trembling lake like foamless seas, her bird delighting citron trees in every purple vale. Again, the new words. Silver pale, basically the word pale means light colored. Pale means light colored. The next word we have is glen. Glen means narrow valley, a narrow valley. Thicket means thick trees or bushes. Thick trees or bushes. Dale means broad valley. Broad valley. The word flashing refers to twinkling or shining. Twinkling or shining. Next is the word scented breeze, which means sweet smelling air. Sweet smelling air. Then we have the word trembling, which means moving violently. Trembling, which means moving violently. The next is the word delighting, which means enjoying. Enjoying. And the last word vale means valley. Valley. Okay, now this is the last stanza of the poem. The poet says that he not only wants to be the king of the land of Tartary, but he also wants to own each and everything that falls under this land. So in the last stanza, he comes up with the entire summarization of his dream, his desire. So he says that he does not want to be the king of only the land of Tartary, but he wants to rule each and everything that comes under this place. So it would be all the landforms, it could be all the natural habitats, the air, the stars, the clouds, the rain, everything. So he wants to be the king of everything that comes under this land. The poet wants to own all the fruits that grow in Tartary. When the moonlight falls on river water, the water looks silver in color. So he wants to be the king of all the fruits that grow in the region. So they could be any type of fruit, but he wants to be the king of all the fruits. So he should decide what has to be done with what fruit. That is what it means here. Then he says that whenever moonlight falls on river water, the river water looks silverish in color. It looks very pale silver in color. So he wants to own these rivers as well. So he wants to own the region. He wants to own the fruits and vegetation of the region. He wants to own the water bodies of the region as well. Then he wishes to be the king of all the hills, narrow and broad valleys, thick trees and forests. So apart from fruits and vegetables and apart from water bodies, he wants to be the king, the ruler of all the mountains and hills, of all the valleys, of all the forests, everything. Okay. Not only this, the poet wants to be the king of the stars that twinkle over Tartary. So imagine, just look at the imagination of the poet. Look at his desire. He wants to be the king of all the stars that twinkle over the land of Tartary, that twinkle and they spread their light on this land of Tartary. He wants to be the ruler of those stars as well. He wants to be the king of the sweet smelling air that flows through Tartary. So he wants to rule the air that flows through the land of Tartary also. He wants to own the mighty violent seas and all the citron trees filled with joyful birds. So he wants to own the rivers, the lakes, the ponds, and even the huge mighty violent seas. He wants to own the trees and forests. He wants to own all the fruits and vegetables. He wants to own all the birds and animals of the region also. He desires to be the Lord. He desires to be the Lord of the entire region of Tartary, including all the landforms, all the animals, all the birds, everything. So from the four stanzas that we have discussed, we come to know the level or the height of imagination that the poet has, and we also understand what desire he has. So his desire is to be a king, and he does not want to be any ordinary king, but he wants to be a king who is one of his kind, a king of a region which is extremely rich, which is exotic and unique in its own ways, and he wants to be the ruler of that land in the true sense of the word. So basically, the poem Tartary, which is written by Walter de la Mare, is a journey into the realm of imagination. So this poem is a journey which takes us through the different aspects of human imagination. The poem tells that human imagination has no boundaries. So now that we have discussed the four stanzas, we have clearly understood that human imagination has no limitations, it has no boundaries. It is all in our mind. Whatever we want to be, whatever we want, whatever our desires are, we can imagine and it will all happen, even if it is happening in our own fantasy land. But then our imaginations have no limits. Each human has a deep desire, and once in a lifetime we see our desire being fulfilled in the form of a dream. So the poet says that each human being has a deep desire, and in our entire lifetime all of us see our desires coming true in the form of our dreams. Some fulfill them in real life, some who cannot fulfill their desires at least fulfill them in the form of a dream. So dreams are something which belong completely to us, on which nobody has any control. We ourselves don't have any control on our dreams, and our dreams are a reflection of our deep hidden desires. So I hope you all have enjoyed this poem, a short, sweet, simple poem which takes us through this imaginary fantasy land along with the poet, and somewhere down the line we ourselves realize that each one of us has such desires which we may or may not be able to fulfill, but dreams have no boundaries. So thank you for joining today, and I hope to see you in the next session. Till then, take care all of you. Bye.